And another kind of first thing that pops into your head question. Loriana asks, what is the place you love most in the world?
I have no idea. Actually, somewhere that I really love is Bexhill Seafront, which is a very quiet little place. But yeah, I don't know why I love it so much, but I do.
Annie in New York says, Tim, do you ever take real time off and just relax?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Sort of. I guess it's, probably not, but that's the nature of being in a band, isn't it? Or certainly being a songwriter is you're always thinking and always working on songs, and I don't think of it as being work really, but it makes it hard to completely relax. I don't think I could ever sit down and think, great, I've cleared my in tray and I've got nothing to do this weekend, because I think there's always something to do. But then I think it's almost assumed that if you're in a band, you ought really to be able to spend most of your time sort of sitting by the pool, drinking a martini, and I don't know. It's no, I don't know. Do most people get lots of time off? Probably not.
No, not really.
Don't think so. So yeah, probably just the same as everyone else, really.
Petra from Holland would like to know how you felt when you saw Tom performing with Keane. Were you proud or jealous or anything else?
With Queen?
With Queen, yes. Yeah. So Keane.
With Keane, yeah.
You've never seen him perform.
Yeah, it was good to see him perform with Keane. He keeps turning up night after night.
How did you feel seeing him perform with Brian May, Roger Taylor, Queen?
I thought it was amazing. It actually brought a tear to my eye. I felt so sort of... well, firstly, I felt very proud of him, as proud for him, I suppose, because I thought it was just an amazing performance. Really, it's nice. I mean, I don't think that we take his abilities for granted, but of course you get used to it. We play together all the time, we rehearse together, do gigs and hang out, so I'm used to hearing him sing Somebody We Know and Is It Any Wonder, but it's only when you hear his voice taken out of context, those Queen songs are probably even more demanding on the voice. I've definitely felt like, wow, that is pretty phenomenal, and I doubt there's anyone else in any pop band in the world that could have done that job as well as he did. So yeah, and also just because of knowing how much of a Queen fan he is and has been. We used to, when we were 10 years old, we used to spend sort of summer afternoons when it was lovely sunny outside, sort of shut the curtains and watch Queen's greatest hits on video, volumes 1 and 2, and yeah, so that's one of those sort of really miraculous things where you go from being a 10-year-old boy sort of pretending to be Freddie Mercury and being excited about having a microphone and prancing around and singing, it's a kind of magic, and then whatever, 20 years later he's sort of actually on stage. It's just absolutely mental, isn't it?
Did you go on? Did you get to go to the Albert Hall?
I didn't go, no, but I watched it the next day on some very dodgy YouTube footage or whatever. It was, you could just tell it was...
Even on the dodgy YouTube, you could tell, even from a camera filmed at the top of the balcony.
Yeah, well, people were saying that, the whole thing was pretty, as you would expect, given the nature of it. It was a pretty kind of restrained affair, and, it was quite, there wasn't, lots of sort of pretty kind of veteran rockers doing their thing or more restrained people, and it felt like the whole thing suddenly sort of caught fire as soon as Tom went out, and I think it just shows what a great frontman he is.
Gino, or Georgina rather, from Mexico, says that she loves Bed Shaped but doesn't understand it. Please could you explain what the song is about? I don't know how much you like to explain your songs, but could you give even an inkling of what Bed Shaped is about?
Yeah, I mean I'm terrible at explaining lyrics, and I should just sort of refuse to, but it's so nice that people are interested. It's really just about, you know, being in love, I suppose, when you're young and then drifting apart. You know, I'm sure it's definitely part of growing up in a small town where it's one of those towns that people tend to leave, you know, and you know, the people, friends and you know, girlfriends that I had when I was younger, you know, everyone sort of drifted off to go up to London or travel the world and do whatever they were going to do, and I guess it was about the hope or believing that, you know, eventually we'd sort of somehow all be brought back together, you know, when we're too old to be out sort of seeking our fortune or whatever.
So, and what is shaped like a bed? Like, I know it's a very, very...
Well, that was, the bed-shaped thing is really just, I guess, about being old, and that was a word that I thought was a commonly used word, because it was a phrase, a word that my mum used to use a lot. And she was a doctor, well, she still is a doctor actually, but she would talk about hospital patients becoming bed-shaped. It's quite a common problem, so they'd spend that whole time just lying in bed, and you gradually sort of lose the ability to flex or whatever, you know, 'cause you're just lying still the whole time. It's, you know, and it's a big problem. So, but anyway, I thought that was an interesting image.
Well done, Georgina, for that question. I had no idea of that myself. Amethyst, or Sarah, asks if you could borrow the TARDIS, where, or Doctor Who's TARDIS this is, where or when would you visit?
Not one of the other TARDIS.
No, right, some people may not know what the TARDIS is, but Doctor Who's TARDIS specifically, where or when would you visit?
Model. What can you do with the TARDIS? You can go where?
I think you can go back in time, or travel. I mean, you could just go to London, but it would seem a bit of a waste.
Yeah. Oh wow. What would I do? I mean, there are so many things, aren't there? But in a sort of Keane context, I'd love to go back to the kind of hopes and fears period and have a bit more of a grasp of what was happening to us, and I think we could have enjoyed that period a lot more and had a lot more fun, and sort of simultaneously prevented ourselves from having the sort of slight problems that followed that. But you know, it was just one of those, like so many things in life, it just sort of whizzed by, and this you never didn't think that initial rush was either going to end or was going to lead to anything bad. But so yeah, that was a very interesting time that would be quite cool to be able to revisit with a slightly more level head.
Next question is from she's from Brazil. I think it's Simonina. I'm not totally sure. Apologies, Simonina. My question is, if you happen to have a new inspiration for a good lyric, how do you choose if it would be used for Keane or Mount Desolation? Was there an overlapping period where you were writing for both, or was it you just had a Mount Desolation period?
No, I had just a quick rush of Mount Desolation writing, really. I think I suddenly got into a kind of Mount Desolation headspace and didn't really know. The Mount Desolation concept was very well, firstly very simple, but also very kind of it's potentially kind of threw its neck quite wide. Like really anything that sort of was sort of, it started off being very kind of, let's write loads of country songs about, you know, Highway 61 and whatever, but then it eventually sort of came to include just about anything that sort of, that was quite kind of folky or soulful or countryish, I suppose. So, but they were, my initial sort of rush of writing was, already had one song that was very countryish, it didn't make the album eventually, and then Departure and The Midnight Ghost, and yeah, I think the only one that would have been a Keane contender was Bitter Pill, but the others were very specifically kind of, like Bridal Gown was definitely written in that sort of rush of Mount Desolation stuff, but then, you know, at the time we were still, I think we were still touring Perfect Symmetry, so yeah, we were still touring Perfect Symmetry, so it felt like we'd become that sort of band, and really now we didn't know where we were going to go musically at Keane, and now it sort of, it seems like something like Bridal Gown, or especially like Coming Home, I think would have fitted really nicely into a Keane album, but it didn't seem like that at the time. So yeah, but I don't know. I think Mount Desolation gave us the license to be, not to worry too much about whether stuff was a little bit traditional or, you know, I think with Keane we'd probably try it a bit harder to be original, for example, and I don't think originality is a prerequisite of pop music, but it's something that we've always prized fairly highly in Keane, and I don't think with the more traditional styles like country and folk, I think they're a bit more, it tends to embrace a sort of traditional concepts a bit more.